for a while for our opening prayer, followed by the Philippine National Anthem. Let us put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Dear Father, we offer everything and thank you for everyone gathered here today to walk with you. May we ask you for your blessing and guidance so that the activity set for this undertaking be successful. We ask you to open our eyes to see the wonderful things from this activity. We ask that you open our ears so that we may retain the invaluable knowledge. Open our minds for us to think wisely. Put us with understanding, cooperation, and peace in fulfilling our responsibilities. Open our hearts so that we may receive your everlasting love, and open our spirits so that we may know that you are with us all throughout the day. We ask all this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Kayang magiging, tegas ng sinakanan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, kuya ka ng magiting, sa manluluping, di ka pasisingin, sa nagatak tutok sa simoy at sa langit ng bagaw, ay hinatang tula, kawin sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nagtitindig, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pamay di magtitindig. Luman ang araw ng walhaging pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang inigaya ng pagkay mga amin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Hello again. We are all happy to have all of you in this webinar. The last one we had was last October 2022. That was a long time ago, right? We hope that you're all ready for a morning of gaining valuable information on the most modern library service platform, and at the same time to have fun with the things our team prepared for all of you. Before we begin, we would just like to advise everyone of our webinar guidelines. All of the participants' microphones and videos are turned off by default. If you have a question or if you have questions on the topic, please type it on the designated Q&A box found at the lower right-hand side of your screen. Questions will be read at the end of the presentation. This will ensure a smooth flow and to not interrupt the speaker. E-certificates will be provided for participants who have registered, attended, and answered our brief survey. After this webinar, please wait a minimum of 2 weeks before receiving your certificates via email. We will be having a fun game at the end of the webinar, so please stay with us until the end. Sit back, listen, and have a fun learning experience with us. Okay, now let me introduce our speaker. We would like to say good morning to everyone who are also just about to sign in. We're about to begin. So now it's time to introduce, and we are very honored to have Mr. Mike McKinnon, Director of SaaS Innovation at EBSCO. Mike has been working in technology for 20 years, with 16 of those years in the library industry. He was an early team member of ProQuest Summon and Intota products, and an original contributor of Plum Analytics in the research, analytics, and engagement space. For the past 9 years at EBSCO, he has worked with EBSCO SaaS, native and partner services, and he currently focuses on EBSCO services supporting Folio, an open source community-driven library service platform. And another important fact about Mike is that Mike has a soft spot for us Filipinos because his wife is a Filipina. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Mr. Mike McKinnon. Hello, Mike.
Hello, hello. Thank you for the introduction, Shara. Let's see here. I am sharing my screen. Hopefully you can see it okay.
Yes, we can see.
Perfect. Well, yeah, thanks for the entry. It has been some time. It's been 18 months or so since the last time I was able to speak to many of you. Folio as a product has come a long way since then, and we're going to get to Folio as a topic, but before I do, I want to cover kind of a lot of the lay of the land, so to speak. I want to talk about some of the technology elements that are driving in our industry right now, as well as we'll see, its impacts outside of the library industry. I'm sure some of the stuff that we'll cover today will be familiar to you, but we're going to start there. So we're going to talk more broadly first about some of the current drivers, and then we'll get into Folio the further along we go. I do think that as you look at the long tail of where we expect to be, say, 18 months to 2 years from now, I think that while the description of the session is simplifying the library workflow, I think it's very appropriate to call it modernizing, which is why my slides themselves have been labeled that way. I think that when libraries look at how they do cataloging, when they look at how they bring in elements into patron UI experiences, it'll be more modern than what we use and do today, which will be great, bringing our library industry forward. So that's what we're going to touch on to start with, and we'll get into Folio as we go. Okay, and I suppose I should take a second just for a little bit of housekeeping. I do plan to do some slides here up front. There's probably about 25 or so slides, so not too many of them. And then we'll get into some live demo environment, showing off some things later. So, okay, so some of the big trends, I want to start here. Some of these will be familiar to you already, meaning particularly when you just look at the first one in the top left, the fact that users have been coming to resource access, whether that's item level, object level access at an article or an ebook, or they're coming in via a reading list, via a faculty member at an academic, or somebody else within, say, a special library or corporate libraries are directing individual patrons to specific items. Most of them actually start at the open web. They don't come via the library website. And then even further distilled from that, unfortunately, is coming in via some of the tools on the library websites. Not all patrons get to a discovery service. Not all patrons get to an OPAC. Not all patrons use an A to Z list. So trying to find ways to get to a patron, particularly when they're coming in on the open web at large, is something that we've known for some time. I think libraries themselves know as well. You've been doing engagement with your subject liaison librarians to engage with faculty. Many of you use multiple tools to try to meet patrons where they live. You probably use tools like browser plugins, whether that's a libkey from Third Iron, or maybe I'm using something else. So I think we've all been trying to aware of this issue and trying to solve for that for some time. Now, the other thing that's happened in our industry is that top one there, we're going to spend a little bit more time, the top one there on the right, the library's pushing towards linked open data. We're going to spend a little bit more time there as we go. But the idea about BibFrame and linked data has been pushed forward from just a discussion. BibFrame was, ideated on about 14 years ago or so, 12 years ago, give or take. And now we're at a place where it's starting to be implemented more broadly. So there will be workflow implications from that downstream, and we're going to talk about that at depth. And then if you go to the number 3 in the bottom left there, you'll also see that of late, many of the different library industry vendors have built data graphs, have published their own linked data models. Many of them are proprietary in nature. They're an individual vendor or publisher. There's not very many open data graphs. So you as librarians will want to see that and make sure that the tools that you're investing in are tools that aren't just contained in one silo. You're going to want to be able to get whatever data you leverage in a linked data graph to get that data out so that you can repurpose that data and the time spent curating that data rather than just keeping it in one silo. But those data graphs are leading to number 4 on the bottom right there, the large language models and generative AI. We're going to talk about that too. That's definitely in our collective future, whether we talk about library industry or just holistic humanity. It's definitely something that we're going to be adopting in our own workflows in our day-to-days. I know students already do, many faculty already do. So how is it going to impact library systems, and how is it going to impact our workflows around data? Those are all things we're going to touch on today. Okay, so let's start here. So the Library of Congress in September of 2022 had a press release, and this was the top caption of the press release. Apologies for the kind of grainy image there. But the caption is that they announced to the market that they were adopting a service that did native BibFrame and native linked data editing as part of their collection workflows. And this actually has a little bit of history to it, in that the Library of Congress actually announced in 2012 that they would be framing out the future description schema in BibFrame as ways to unpack a library catalog from MARC. So look, librarians, we all have expertise at data management. And we've all do really good work around descriptive data for our collections and our holdings. However, that data is very siloed. It's in a container in our catalog. When it's in MARC, really nothing other than the ILS knows how to read MARC. So how do we get it out of this format here? The MARC record on the left, and it could be in MARC 21, it could be MARC XML, it could be CN MARC, it could be mods or METs or CatP or many different flavors or varieties. This is still a siloed nature. Repositories in Dublin Core or archives in EAD. These are still all siloed. And especially outside of library tools, when you look at open data systems in a commercial world, many of them have no idea how to read these types of records and formats. We need to extract them into something that is JSON or extract them into something that is an XML. We need to put them into a different format for them to be leveraged. Well, that's really what the purpose is of identifying BibFrame and linked data downstream from BibFrame, is that once you unpack a catalog record like on the left, where we can map fields within, say, the author field or a title or subject level headings, we can map them to a BibFrame schema that has a back end of a JSON output, means that now we can actually leverage in a dynamic way the data that's been curated over here into data that can be consumed over here on a regular basis. And in going further from that, if we add in provenance data, so where did this record and this field, in particular this author field as a contributor, where did this record come from? Well, this is the DC library right here. And this resource identifier, this is a UUID, a unique universal identifier. So if each field in the BibFrame schema can show where it got that field information from DC libraries and has a unique identifier to it, and now we can connect this link, if you will, around description. We can connect this in a graph, in a data graph. We can now enrich data collections with other data graphs. We can create connections from one graph to another. So that's what libraries are doing with a lot of these, and vendors are doing with a lot of these data graphs, is a library in particular, a library could extract their catalog in Mark, right? Extract it, do a transformation of their catalog from Mark into BibFrame, and now they have their own data graph, their libraries collection in a data graph. And now it's about connecting your library's data graph to other graphs that are out there. And those other graphs could be authority services, like the Library of Congress has an authority service, or it could be like an ORCID, authority for author data, or it could be specialty authorities for heritage collections. I know in particular in the Australia markets, they have an authority service called AATSIS. That's the Aboriginal and Indigenous Australians of Torres Strait Islanders authorities. Well, these are very curated authority description terms around works, around items and authors, contributors. And what we want to do is we want to have those collections in the graph. Once they're in the graph and we can create relationships to our own library's catalogs, we can now enrich those catalog records with the data that the cataloger maybe never knew to get. Maybe they didn't know other co-author data. Maybe they didn't know there was other subject data that needed to be cataloged against that item. So being able to enrich it with a graph, with a data graph, and do it in a dynamic way will improve a lot of the description work. Okay, so data graphs are important. This whole foundation of graph data is important. But I want to talk in particular around the automation of this then. And that once you have your data in a graph, you as a library can become very empowered. You can say, okay, well, my collection is in graph. I want to choose from a variety of graph tools to enrich my collections. Maybe what I value in my library is the Library of Congress authorities. Maybe what you value in your library isn't the Library of Congress authorities, you value a different authority. Well, that's great. You want to be able to choose what that is for your authorities and enrichment. So the more sources we can get onto this graph, the better. And the graph that I'm referring to in this is actually a product that EBSCO has. The product is called Bibliograph. This is different than Folio, but we're going to see the Folio relationship in a little bit. This is different than Folio. This is about taking your own catalog data. It doesn't matter what ILS you have. Take your own catalog data, extract it, put it into BibFrame, and then put it into the open data graph. It is an open data graph. Now that part's important because it allows us to make connections for open data sources like Wikidata or LCNAF, the name authority files, or things like that. So being able to enrich it with a lot of this open web enrichment will be great. Okay, so that's Bibliograph and the foundation of linked data there for us. It's going to be important when we talk about size and scope for how that relates to cataloging in Folio. Now, just for context, for size, the University of Melbourne in Australia used the Bibliograph product that I just mentioned, and they extracted their Sierra records. They used Sierra as a catalog. They extracted their 1.2 million holdings in Mark, and then they transformed them to BibFrame with the tool. With those BibFrame relationships established, you can see they went from 1.2 million records to now creating relationships across authors and subject terms or other dates terms, so maybe author dates as far as death dates or birth dates, things like that. These relationships now become connections in the graph that now we can navigate across the graph showing relationships from one item to the next. Now this is subject, object, and predicate in BibFrame terms, if you're familiar with BibFrame, but these relationships become very important for wanting to enrich records. Now, in addition, you'll see down here on the bottom, these 3,000 Google hits to the catalog per month. Well, remember the number one point in the very first slide was that users are coming from the open web. The other part there about getting your data in a graph so that non-library tools could consume that data, remember I mentioned that? Well, that is like the Google Knowledge Graph. So EBSCO partners with Google so that we can send a lot of collection metadata and holdings metadata for different libraries and make that data visible to users on the open web. This is very helpful for where Google makes this available. Not all markets it's available in, and that's okay, but it's simply to show you an example of non-library tools consuming graph data. So anywhere where there's a service or a tool that can consume a data graph, you would be able to leverage the bibliograph JSON output that file. Now, the Library of Congress did have many different use cases that were identified. These URLs are going to be in the slide deck, so I know that we will share the slides after this session today. And you'll be able to click these and you'll be able to go back and view some of these use cases. Some of them still are very valid in today's patron workflows or even today's librarian workflows. For instance, maybe you have an item in your collection, but you need it in a different format. So you want to find out all the formats that are available to that item. Well, you'd be able to see it if it was available anywhere else on the graph, right? So that type of visibility to everything from ISBNs to authors and their works to subject-related data and all holdings with that subject, it very quickly becomes something that opens you up to, oh, there's a lot more information about this in my library's collection than I knew previously. Now, here's a video, just a quick example of that open web discovery. You see that I'm actually not authenticated anywhere, and I'm doing a search for a specific item, and then I clicked on Get Book in Google. And Google normally says you should go buy it, but if it knows your geographic location, it will say you can actually just borrow it. And if you click on hardcover there, that takes the user right to the catalog. So this is just an example of sending graph data to a tool that consumes graph data and then has a front end that can use that data set. So it's not just being used here. Other ways that you could use data graphs could be leveraging for things within academic or campus IT departments to tie library collections and the research office. Or maybe you want to be able to start training your own generative AIs or large language models in your own institutions against your library data that's not under any type of license restriction or any type of copyright restriction. Well, you could do that if you had large language model ready graphed data, and that's where we're going to go next. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is where we're going next, in that what EBSCO is doing at large is that graph, that product I mentioned is called Bibliograph. That graph data set, EBSCO is starting to leverage graph data across many of the different services that we have. You're all probably very familiar with the EBSCO Discovery Service. You're probably all familiar that EBSCO has a knowledge base underneath that service that also empowers our publication finder for our A to Z list. It empowers linking. It has a lot of publisher metadata. Well, one of the things that we can do is we can pull out data for leveraging patron experiences. So in this example is pulling out citation-related data and putting it right into EDS, into the discovery service. Now, you'll see here there's two references to citations. One has the cited count over here, and this has a cited count here, and they're not the same. This is because this is a mock-up. We're still in active development on this, and we're not sure if we're going to put cited down here on this side or if we're going to put it under this side. Personally, I like this, but I'm sure we'll do some usability studies. But the idea is that if we know what the metadata is behind this item, things like DOIs, or if it's a book, we could have an ISBN or an EISBN, and then we could find out citation data from other vendors and publishers that we work with at EBSCO, such as Scopus citations. And we could find out if that item has any other citation relationships. Now, the citation relationships could be a citation directly in the item, like what we saw in the previous screen where we had the two different variants. It could also be a citation relationship like this, where what we're doing is we're looking for a way to show all citations relative to a query and show the topmost cited items in a carousel right on the top. So sure, we're going to have results down below on monomolecular films in this query. But we also want to highlight the most cited items within that result set, because we're still going to use relevancy in the query to rank the items as they come back. But what if the patron, the searcher that's using this is actually just after really top cited items? Well, this might be an easy way to get those items right up to the top, so we could put it into a carousel like this. Now, another thing that we can do is we can leverage all of this graph data, and we can start working with generative AI services. And in fact, that's what we're working on quite a bit now, is we have our own group of people that are working on how best to leverage generative AI in EBSCO services. We don't expect to have anything until a little bit further in this calendar year, but it is worth noting what I'm showing you right here is in beta at a couple sites already. So it's not like it's a really far distant future. It's something that we're actively working on now. And that is really two variants of leveraging generative AI. One is what's called RAG AI, or Retrieval Augmented Generated AI. And that is where we are able to train an AI so that we give it a collection of metadata, a scoped collection of metadata. And so we're able to train it so that all of the responses are in line with that scoped data set, rather than having hallucinations that might drive a user into something that isn't even related. So one is RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generated. And then the other one that we're looking at is called vector AIs. And vector AIs is using a lot more mathematics behind finding the most relevant item to the query being asked, against relationships of objects and queries and natural language, to then bring up a result that might be suiting the query more accurately. We're going to be leveraging a combination of the two so that we're training an AI against scholarly material, but we're also going to be trying to find the most relevant queries by making sure that we're using some vectors for very relevant responses. Okay, so once you know about vector AIs and RAG AIs, one of the ways to put it into a patron experience is to use this insight summary, is what we're looking at here, underneath an individual item. So this is an item result, and it has all of our subject terms, and I can click this and get to the item now. But what if I just wanted to get the top 3 quick takeaways from this item? What are the quick 3 things I could get out here? Well, we'll have a summarization available right in this item. Now, another thing that we want to do, though, is extract that just a little bit and say, okay, well, we know what a lot of researchers will do is they will make more than one search query. Yes, some of our undergraduates maybe make one query or two queries and then go away, but our researchers have greater needs than that. And oftentimes they will take many different times, many different sessions even, and save items into that same topical area or that same research focus area. So what if we had a tool, a generative AI summary tool that would create comparisons of all of the items that I've saved and now put it into a grid that then easily made it visible as to say, what am I getting from each of these items? So that's this grid level summary here. For those of you that are familiar with the new EDS user interface, I don't have a screenshot of it here, but where we're thinking of putting this is if I go into my patron folders in New EDS, so if I go into the left margins and I go into the project management dashboard, and I find in the project management, I have projects listed there and saved items under those projects, we're thinking of putting the grid into that space there. Also thinking of engaging with a chat service, a generative AI chat service. That's pretty common now. And then lastly, another summary using an insights summary with the top distilled elements, but not of an item. Instead, what we're doing is we're doing a summary of the query itself. So it's funny, if you actually look at EDS backend, if you as a whole, not just in one individual library, but if you look across EDS globally, in the last few years, it's odd, we've gone away from, most users have gone away from just keyword searching and instead typing full queries, and oftentimes they'll have punctuation. So a lot of this is driven by NLP, the natural language processes, but also it's driven by patron behavior that's exposed via tools like ChatGPT, right? The most adopted tool ever in the shortest span. So trying to engage it as our patrons would, we want to make sure that we're delivering a quick summary right underneath that query before we get to the results too. Now, all of these, remain to be seen. We're hoping to have delivery on these this calendar year. We're also not sure yet how libraries will manage this. We'd like to get it into the EBSCO Experience Manager, so where you currently go and do administrative changes for your new EDS, we'd like to be able to make those tools available for you to enable at your own pace, but we're not sure yet. It's still early. So pretty good, I think, first level engagements with generative AI, needing to make sure that we are still meeting patron needs and not, we are a little concerned about, hallucinations and having patrons find results that aren't relevant. So we'll be cautious about that, but leveraging a lot of the graphed data and the linked data underneath is becoming very foundational for us across services. And this is just one way to expose that data. Okay. Now, the other way to expose the graph data is with Folio, and I'm going to talk about that. In particular, this is what we're all here for today. I know I'm now 30 minutes into the presentation already. And we're just now getting to Folio. Yep. So here we are. If you're not sure what Folio is an acronym. It stands for The Future of Libraries is Open. It is an open source ILS or LSP, Library Services Platform. It has been adopted by 140 or so libraries worldwide today, including the Library of Congress, the National Library of Australia. There's a consortia in the United States called Galileo that makes up 26 academics that were on ALMA and now have moved over to Folio. There's other consortia like the Mobius consortia in the US. There's many institutions that aren't even using EBSCO. Remember, it's open source. They can go on their own to Folio. Folio code is published to GitHub. It has its own GitHub repo. And there's a Folio wiki that describes quite a bit of things. So Some libraries, like Stanford Library and University of Chicago, they've deployed Folio on their own. So really, Folio at large is available for libraries of all types and sizes. Big research national libraries, consortia, academics. There's even a public library on Folio today. And including, by the way, Silliman University. And I saw we had some in the crowd from Silliman, so congratulations. Thank you for attending, and congratulations on adopting Folio. I know you're still in implementation with a go live targeted towards August. I would expect that implementation is still going pretty smoothly. Our implementation team is really hands-on, is very flexible, and pretty diligent trying to making sure that we meet timelines and are transparent throughout the process of getting you live. So I'm doing your print management, e-resource management, and of course, the analytics tool that comes with it. We're really excited for all of you. Congratulations. Now, Folio itself is just one product under a suite of products that is governed by the OLF, the Open Library Foundation. The Open Library Foundation is a nonprofit organization. They govern the global open knowledge base. They govern OpenRS, which is an ILL and resource sharing service. They govern ArcLight, which is a archiving service, and ViewFind. The board of directors of OLF are all librarians and a couple vendors that all populate and service the community of the OLF. So it's not just EBSCO that makes up that group. Okay, so why are all those big libraries and not so big libraries, why are they all adopting Folio? Well, as mentioned in the title of this slide deck, as a modernization of library management and workflows, is because Folio is a microservices platform. It has an underlying operating system and individual applications that sit on top that allows you flexibility to deploy what you want to deploy in your environment and not deploy things you don't need. Applications ingest data and transfer data via APIs, which means that if you have a desire, which many of those former adopting institutions do, if you have a desire to connect Folio data via an API to another service, it allows you to do that. This means that Folio will enable you to scale to your future needs, even when those future needs are unknown, right? If all of the data with Folio is openly available in APIs and has bespoke applications that operate independently, where new applications could come on or old applications could stay or leave, that flexibility and nature of a system really means that Folio is a true platform as a service and gives you a lot of flexibility as an institution over the next coming, say, 10, 15 years as you as a library may change. Now, I wanted to point out, coming back to the data graph story, about the Library Congress's adoption of Folio. And this is where we get to the modernization piece that I mentioned in the beginning. And that is that Library Congress, when they went to tender for an ILS, they required that any vendor that responds to the tender must have two things. One is the library services platform must have an underlying data graph that natively stored library catalog data in graph format. And two, that the library services platform natively supported bib frame description or linked data description tools. And no library platform could do that at the time, including Folio. So what EBSCO did is EBSCO reached out to the Library Congress and said, we are working on an open source platform. If you wanted to work with us, we are happy to provide the technical expertise to build that functionality in Folio. And that's exactly what happened. We agreed to the terms that the Library of Congress wanted, and we have spent and are continuing to spend a lot of our time doing development work in Folio to meet the Library of Congress requirements. Now, it's really important because this idea about storing graph data is all of that future stuff that I mentioned before in an ILS. It's the first time it will have happened where a library could have a new collection of records. So maybe you're getting new records here. These are copy catalog records, or maybe you purchased a new collection. Maybe you just are doing some original cataloging. But all of these records go into this transformation pipeline where it gets transformed to BibFrame mapping from MARC into BibFrame. And it follows the rules you have of your tenant. So how do you catalog? Well, that is then the rules it would follow to do transformation to BibFrame. Once their records are transformed to BibFrame, then it will take those records and store them in a native data graph. This data graph does have connections to traditional ways to store MARC records, or to retrieve MARC records, or to service up data imports or export tools, or to do MARC editing. It has all of the traditional avenues, but it also allows you to be in graph format, which means you can now use BibFrame editing and linked data editing tools, as well as what we call syndication, but that is taking that JSON extract file from the data graph and it's making it available for other consumption elsewhere. So the data graph is an industry first. This RDF import, this resource description framework import, means that we're schema agnostic. So it is no longer about MARC or MARC 21 or DC or EAD. It's being schema agnostic in BibFrame. And that's a first, as well as a native BibFrame editor tool. All of these are firsts. So a lot of really great new functionality to set up your future platform for a long-term state with Folio. Now, I also put in a couple just mock-up slides. The mock-up, actually, these exist. I could take the mock-up off. That Marva editor app you can see right here, we're going to see Folio Live in a moment. But the mock-up is there because this is still something that our product teams are working with the Library of Congress on the UI to see if this is indeed what they want. But this is the BibFrame editor, where I would be in an app, in Folio as the platform, and I could do BibFrame editing. So let's go see Folio. Okay. Can you see my browser?
Yes, we can, Mike.
Perfect. Thank you, Sharon. Okay, so here I am at Folio. And I'm logging in. Now, first things first, notice I am in my Chrome browser. In Chrome, in my Chrome browser. Now, so this isn't in a local client. This is a web-based, browser-based ILS LSP. In here, I can do a lot of things like you would normally do in browsers. I could make this mobile compliant if I wanted to. If I wanted to go to dev tools and change this to mobile, this could be mobile compliant. So if I am a librarian and I'm walking in the stacks and I'm trying to find something, I could be on a mobile device in my stacks looking at my collections. In addition, you'll notice that these apps across the top here, these are going to be flexible based on the permissions of my role. So I'm logged in as me, and the apps that I have in my Folio tenant, they're based on the permissions that I have for me as a user. Just like with your iPhones or your Androids, you have a settings app, and you have settings tell the phone, in those examples, how the phone should work with other apps you have. Well, in this case, Folio has a settings app that dictates how Folio should work with the apps you have in your Folio environment. So if I go to my users app, I can set up permission sets, and I can set permission sets based on user roles that I have in my institution. So again, what you were seeing here, all these apps are based on my permission set as a user. As I mentioned, well, this is all governed right here. This is where I would set this up. I could set up patron groups, so how I do description work in my users app. I could set up rules around orders and how how invoices need to be captured and recorded. I could set up cataloging rules around instance records, holdings records, or item records in Folio. So all of how I set stuff up is done in my Settings app. I'm not going to spend a lot of time there because I know we're starting to get up towards the end. I want to just look at a couple different things. So here I'm in inventory. This is where I would capture all of my physical collections. I suppose I could do ebooks in here, but I would recommend against it. You could do repository or archives in here, probably recommend against it. But this is where you would do a lot of your bibliographic description work. So for instance, if I wanted to see The Audacity of Hope here, a Barack Obama book, sorry, you'll notice that these are all flexible panels, and these are what we call accordions. They can collapse because there's quite a bit of data here, so they can collapse, or I can expand them all. But in this holding, so I'm in an instance record for this item, The Audacity of Hope, wherever it went, right there. I'm in this instance record, but I actually have an item level record right here that's on my shelf. Now I could quickly copy that barcode if I wanted to, or I could just click into the barcode and it'll take me to this item level record. And you could see it is currently circulating. It's not available. But this gives me item level availability or detail. And in fact, if I wanted to come up here and I wanted to do some bibliographic description work, I can do some quick cataloging changes in here. And if I needed, I could link to authority fields if I needed to and mark authorities. So all of my cataloging functionality would be here. Now, of course, if you don't catalog here and you're using a really robust cataloging tool, maybe that's the lion's share of your workload, you're going to want to use a tool like data import, and you're probably going to want to do a ton of robust cataloging somewhere else and then load it into Folio. You could do that with a data import set. The other thing I wanted to show you in our brief time here today is I wanted to talk about ERM. So Folio, of course, does print management, but it also does e-resource management. I suppose it's URN, though, Universal Resource Management. And here I'm looking up a provider, and here it's EBSCO, and I could see inside of EBSCO that there are a lot of packages. Now, maybe what I actually want to do is I want to only see the packages that I've subscribed to. So I changed that to those that are selected. You can see that some of these, I've only selected 2 titles out of a total of 1,900. Some of them I've selected the whole package. Well, it's pretty easy to come into these and just say, okay, well, I can either subscribe to all titles, or I could go into the package title list and I could subscribe to an individual title, like what's been done here, selected. So lots of individual functionality here. Maybe I don't want to select this one. Yes, please remove that. Not selected anymore. Easy to add, letting you know it was updated. Metadata around this item. Like it's all here. And you can even see that we've been able to attach an agreement, the license agreement for this e-resource. So if I click into this, this will now take me to the Agreements app. Well, this is one of the benefits of Folio and all of those bespoke applications of how APIs interconnect data, that data allows you to go at the point of need, these links. So I went at the point of need in a title to the agreement for that, the governing agreement for that title. And in this agreement itself, if I wanted to go to the license for this agreement, I could even come down and I could click into this license as well. And this license would take me to the Licenses app. So this interoperability across applications means that your workflow is never very rigid. It's very flexible, and it gives you a lot of ability to service what it is that your library staff work on. Managing users. So I'm going to pull myself up here. I can manage which patron groups I'm part of, requests or loans that I may have, permission sets, access points. It's all managed here. Okay. Now, there's a lot of Folio and big deep dives on Folio that can be done, but I want to just touch on a couple other things that come with EBSCO hosted Folio. And that one of those is an OPAC. So here I am at Grand Valley State University, who is live on Folio, and they are using what is called Locate, which is the library online catalog from EBSCO. So at EBSCO, library online catalog at EBSCO. So this is a Locate. And you can see I've done a search query for Obama, the same type of query. And here I am finding items. Maybe the first one I'm after is Michelle Obama here. I can see one's on loan, a couple other are available. I can do shelf browse. Maybe I want to find more items here with related call numbers, or I want to see a description work about this, or I want to get recommendations for similar titles. A lot of this is very traditional OPAC functionality, and it's included with Folio. If I click on one of these, it will now take me to this site. Now, of course, Folio and Locate work with the EBSCO Discovery Service as well. So if you are an EBSCO Discovery Service library, you not only would get an OPAC, and you used EBSCO Folio, you would not only get an OPAC for functionality to meet patrons, but you would have a robust discovery service for managing those e-resources. Remember, your OPACs principally support physical item search and browse. In addition to that is an analytics tool. Now, Folio's analytics is built in with a front end of Tableau. And all of this, by the way, all of this, Folio, Locate, the Tableau data, all of this is hosted in AWS, your Amazon Web Services. So it's all hosted in an environment that is scalable and global with different load balancing, geographic load balancing, so that throughput's all good. There's a node, or sorry, an AWS node in Tokyo. There's an AWS node in Sydney. I'm not sure if we've got our Singapore one up. Casey here is on the call. I bet you he could say. But there's geographic loads or nodes for AWS all over for us. Frankfurt as well, UK. Anyway, so lots of different availability there. But here we are, I'm looking at analytics with a Tableau front end. This is all with Folio data as a back end. You can see my circulation statistics. I can see some quick year over year. So this is the previous year and the current year for that subject area. Top 10 most browsed items down here, or sorry, borrowed items down here, again with a previous year over year comparison. And this is just circ data. There's a lot of dashboards that are available, everything from collection management. So maybe I want to look at some procurement data and acquisitions data. If I want to look at my e-resource data, I actually have this open already. So I'm going to look at my counter data. As long as this is counter R4 or 5, 4 or 5 compliant, then this will be loaded into here. So our BR1s, 2s, DB3s, all that kinds of stuff, JR1As, all of that, your archives, all of that would be in these dashboards as well. Previous dashboards already built. Part of your Folio subscription would also get you what's called an Explorer license with Tableau, meaning that Tableau Explorer licenses allow you to build your own dashboards. So if some of the dashboards that have already been pre-built here are not ones that you need, well, you could go in and you could do some of your own dashboard creation if you wanted to. So maybe you really needed to build a weeding list dashboard. Well, there's already one that's in here like this. If I wanted to look for items that I just have one loan in the last couple of years, and I've got an e-resource version of this, this would be a target for a weeding list. But maybe you want a different format than this. That's what the Explorer license would allow you to do. Okay, so robust ILS, underpinning of new data graphs and bib frame editing tools, OPAC and an analytics tool, and then it can all be connected to your EBSCO discovery service too. So a nice robust suite of services. And with that, I wanted to leave about 5 minutes left for Q&A, and it looks like I'm just on that.
You're okay, Mike?
Yeah, hi, Sharon. You
Oh,
want to handle some
hi.
questions?
Yes, there you have it. Thank you very much, Mike, for that very insightful talk. For those who have questions, please type it in the Q&A box. We have here my colleague Bon, who will be facilitating the Q&A. Okay, Bon,
Hello.
take it
Yeah,
away.
hello. Hello, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Mike, for that very insightful session. For those participants who are asking why the chat function is disabled, because we want you to focus your questions directed to our Q&A box for easy monitoring. So right now, this is your chance to send your questions direct to our Q&A box. So please feel free to send your questions now so we could address those. Okay, so while we are waiting for questions in our Q&A box, so for those of you who are looking for the Q&A box, it's just beside the participants list and the chat box. Okay. So let me first so I also been receiving questions here in Facebook Messenger. So let me read one for you, Mike. Wait.
Let's see, is Folio Web is free or we need a subscription? So
Okay, let's see. Okay.
Folio is open source. So the product itself is available for you to use at any time. If you wanted EBSCO to be involved though, so an EBSCO Folio environment, EBSCO charges for the hosting, so the storing a lot of the data that you're going to have, your bibliographic data, your acquisitions data, users data, all that kind of stuff. And we charge for implementation and support of that product Folio.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Mike. So as Mike mentioned, so Folio is an open source, but with regards to the other services like hosting, so you could reach EBSCO with that one. So okay, so I hope Mike, you could answer this one. So this is a question from Sir Mel from Pat. So what makes it different what makes different Folio from the other LSP around? What's the unique with Folio?
So yeah, as I read the question, I'm a little confused by it, but if I'm comparing Folio against other ILS in the industry, again, the microservices is a big defining difference. All of the things that I discussed around native data graph storage and bibframe editing tools are different. No other service has those as native part of the services. And if you're coming on now, so for Silliman University attendees, your go live date is going to be August. The native bibframe tools, we're hoping to have our first go live in November this calendar. So which is good. I wouldn't want it to be right at the same time that you guys go live, because you need to make sure that you are comfortable with your traditional workflows before you just all of a sudden get thrown right into bibframe. So, but it's supposed to go live later this calendar. It should be really good. But those
Mike,
are all the things that make it different.
Yeah, okay. Mike, can I request if you could stop sharing? So at least
Sure.
we will be focusing on your on the open forum right now. Okay. I have here a question for you, Mike. So it came from one of our the participant doesn't want to send a question in the Q&A box, so send to me directly. The question is, if they want to implement Folio, but they will be the one to host it. So how is it possible with us?
No, EBSCO, if EBSCO is going to be involved, EBSCO does the hosting. Yeah, we won't host in a local environment for an institution. We only host in our own environments.
Yes, and our the hosting services will be done by Amazon, right? It's
That's correct.
AWS. Okay.
Yeah.
So let me check again. For those participants, you could send your message only to our Q&A because if it will be on the chat box, we cannot read your questions and it will queue on the chat box.
I
So
also have
okay.
a question here.
Okay, Joseph has
It's
a question.
texted to me. Would BibFrame be available to those who are going to adopt the open access folio? Because of course, EBSCO folio is a so sort of now a commercial. Folio has been commercialized if you're going to get it from us, right? But
From us,
would
yes, yes.
if would BibFrame be available also for them
Yeah,
if they
all of the
use?
things that I mentioned with the native data graph store and the BibFrame editing tools, those are all already published to GitHub. So they're already available. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joseph, for that question. There's also another question here about Folio ERM. So is it for Folio ERM, is it possible to integrate their digitized library materials in ERM as well?
So like digital assets, so doing some scanning of digital objects, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, something like that.
So Folio does not currently have a DAM, a digital asset management service. It does not do digital asset storage, nor does it have its own, I guess, native digital asset description work outside of something like inventory, which I wouldn't recommend for it. So no, not today. I think what has been identified in the community, remember it's open source, so we deliver on what the community prioritizes, the Open Library Foundation community.
Okay.
And they have identified that, yes, they want to do a dam. Yes, it's something that is a future state of Folio, but not something that's been an immediate priority.
Okay, but definitely maybe it will be on the roadmap, right? As the need
Correct.
arises.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we are not getting questions. So I hope we are okay. There's a question. Okay, I think this is just a quick answer. So there's a question from Miss Gina. So if we are already a subscriber of EBSCO, can we get a folio for free? I'm actually let me answer this, Mike. Actually, Folio is a different thing, but Folio is an open source library service platform, Miss Gina. So we could send you information in Folio Wiki. So you could if you only want the free part of Folio, which is more of the the library workflow itself, and if you need additional services, we can talk about like that. So your current subscription is more of the content. So what we are explaining right now is really more of the library services. So I hope I have answered for your question, Ma'am Gina. Yes, Ma'am Mercy. So please let me know if you have question po, and please state it po in our Q&A box. Okay? So I have another one for you, Mike. I think this is one of the most common questions of, the customers wants, if in case they want to migrate or upgrade to Folio in any way. So how long would be the implementation of EBSCO Folio?
Yes, that actually really depends. Depends on the size and the scope of your collection and how many resources you have in your own institution. We have done, so as an example, one of the slides that I showed you had University of Canterbury on there. They're a library, an academic library in New Zealand. They have about 20,000 students, so that you understand the size of how big they are. And they implemented from a Circe Dynex ILS, they migrated and they implemented into Folio in 5 months. It was probably faster than most libraries. Most libraries are somewhere in the range of 9 to 12 months, I would say, as a general rule of thumb is 9 to 12 months.
Yeah, and it will always be dependent on of course, of the library and all of the questionnaire, then everything that they will be filling out. Okay.
And the size of the collections. I mean, like Library of Congress is 2 years plus, right?
Yes, so indeed.
Yeah.
You mentioned about our services with Folio. So there's a question here. What services can EBSCO extend to help us implement Folio?
So EBSCO has, I want to say it's close to 18 people on the implementation team. It might be 15, but it's around that size of people across the globe who help implement EBSCO Folio environments. What this means is that once you sign your subscription with EBSCO, you'll be assigned an implementation specialist or consultant. That individual will kick off with you and talk about your library and how many staff you have and the size of your collections and what are your typical workflows and how do you want to reflect that in Folio. So there's a lot of consultation that happens with you at the library. And then that individual works with a whole team of people on our end to help connect things like your discovery service, your OPAC, your backend collections tools, like maybe you do purchases on Gobi or the EBSCO Content Manager, EBSCO ECM, or making sure that your cust ID and all of your holdings for your databases are all being connected to the same eHoldings app in Folio. So a lot of that setup is done with many EBSCO team members. And then making sure that once your systems are talking to each other, that then you are also similarly trained. So we have trainers that come in and work with your library staff on their own workflows. So there's many, many hours. Usually it's around 20 to 30 hours of training time just to kind of get started there for your teams to work with Folio, and that's all part of the service and subscription. And then after that's all done and your team's ready to go, then we have support teams as well. So if you have support tickets that get raised, issues or workflows around items or objects or users or any of that kind of stuff in Folio, there's support teams that help too.
Yes, and actually EBSCO technical support. So that's the I think the best thing that is unique with of course having your your Folio implementation with EBSCO for us to really help you more on the technical aspect, because setting it up on your end, of course you need to dedicate manpower, something like that, and at the same time all of those technicalities involved will be EBSCO will be helping you on that. No, so
Okay.
the
Bon, can I add?
yes.
Okay, in a nutshell, what we offer here is actually, again, in a nutshell, Folio is free. So it's an open source software that you can download. Now, what EBSCO offers here is EBSCO Folio, which is actually a service that will make your life stress-free. So number one, we will help you with the implementation. And number two, we will have support. Number three, we will be hosting that. So no more hosting, no more for a library that will be subscribing to EBSCO Folio, there will be no more room wherein you're going to host your server. If you have problems with setting with Folio, where there will be technical teams to help you 24/7. If there because there's no room, of course, if there's brownout, you have no problem because it's accessible 24/7. The only thing that you need is really internet connection. So that's what EBSCO provides you. It provides you stress-free, headache-free, with all the support that we have. And of course, Folio being a library service platform that is modern. So you're getting the most modern library service platform in the market today. So it's just, Mike, it's just 12 years, after 12 years, right? The last library service platform, this is the latest library service platform available in the market.
Yeah, I
right?
think it's 9 or 10 years is when
Mhm.
Alma roughly came into market, which is the most recent one, most recent, newest built. So yep, Folio is definitely the newest system in market.
Thanks, Joseph, for the message. Actually, to add more on what Joseph is mentioning, so Folio is a community of libraries. So this will really help all of the, of course, libraries to have this kind of technology. And as you can see, Mike mentioned, especially on the roadmap, as the community demands for that particular type of service, so we will definitely the community itself will be the one initiating such update on Folio. And of course, EBSCO will be here for the support side in terms of our EBSCO folio services. So there's a question here, Mike, and we hope to have your insight over here because of course we are a developing country and many of the libraries still here in the Philippines, some doesn't have really an ILS, and if they want to really evaluate or check folio first as an open source material. So there's a question here from an anonymous attendee that most of the libraries, of course, the challenge is the library budget or even none at all. With regards to setting up folio, like maybe this is on the free service side. So there is a message here of how it will be set up. I think it's already in Wiki Folio, but I hope you can expound on that, Mike.
So you can go to the Folio wiki. It's wiki.folio.org. It will actually redirect you to a new URL right now that the wiki has driven to see Folio. So you can see some of the Folio environments. That's not where the actual code is, but there is a lot of documentation there. So if you were to go to the wiki and then link to the documentation, or sorry, link to the code is in GitHub. So you could download and install your own environment of Folio if you wanted to. That part of the product, like I said, is free. As far as having EBSCO do it, even for libraries on tight budgets, the recommendation that I would have for you is to reach out to the team here on this call, whether that's Joseph, Bon, or Cher, and they'll work with you. Basically, the pricing is done typically on the sizes of the institutional collections and the sizes of the institution as a whole. So it's really two data drivers to determine costing. So the FTE, the full-time enrollment, and the sizes of the collection so that we know what we're looking at for storage and throughput. So I would work with our local team here on the call, and they can help you come up with pricing for your institution.
Yes, and we will be sharing the link to Folio Wiki at the end of this presentation. So let me have sure, I think that would be the we will need just last two, right? Because we are of course running out of time. Just want to ask, there is a question here from an attendee. If they say, you also mentioned about Folio ERM, even in case that they have already an existing ILS and they are satisfied to that ILS, but they want to have an ERM, can our Folio ERM be a standalone material or standalone subscription to them, or they need to upgrade to Folio? And what is the advantage if in case they will be going to Folio instead of their like local ILS?
No, it's a good question. But remember, Folio is modular, so you only need the apps that you want. You only so if you wanted to use Folio just for an ERM, you already do your print and user circulation data, all that kind of stuff in another system. You could use a Folio environment that just had the e-resource management apps, your e-holdings app, your ability to look at licenses and agreements, all of that kind of stuff. All of that would be available in an ERM version of Folio. So that can certainly happen. Some libraries start there because they have an existing ILS. They already have their typical workflow. So they start with ERM, get comfortable with Folio, doing e-resource management, and then maybe eventually move their physical collections to Folio too. Whatever you decide to do, Folio is flexible.
Yes, thanks. Thank you very much, Mike, for answering the questions of our participants. Before we go to our next session, let me remind the participants that if you have still your questions in mind, the brief questionnaire or the brief survey at the end will enable you to still send questions to us and to Mike. So we will consolidate all of your questions and we'll be sending to Mike. And again, any message to our participants, Mike, before we proceed to our next session?
Nope. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the attendance, and the questions are good. Keep them coming. I think that this space is really exciting, particularly with data graphs and linked data moving us all kind of towards that generative AI, towards that linked data. We're going to see there are sites now, for instance, we didn't even really mention this on the call. University of Concepcion in Latin America is already looking at their Folio environment and the underlying graph data and testing copy cataloging with AI. So having an AI do their copy cataloging for them because of graph data. So things like that, like I think the future looks pretty exciting with the service. So yeah, just stay tuned.
Yeah, AI is really exciting, right?
Hmm.
Anyway, let me give the floor now to Sher for our next session. So let me
Thanks,
share the
everyone.
screen.
Yes, thank you again, Mike. Thank you, Bon. Thank you, everyone, for all your questions. I know Mike is a very busy man, but he's here with us. Again, we truly appreciate your presence in our webinar. He's actually going to catch a flight in a few hours. Thank you very much. And now it's time for our most awaited favorite part, which is game time. Let me read to you the mechanics. Oh, before I move on to the game mechanics, if you have questions as what Bon mentioned, you can add it in the evaluation form, or you can also send an email to either Bon, Joseph, or myself. Okay, and now for the game mechanics. To play this game, click the provided link in the Zoom chat box from Joseph. So Joseph will be putting the link in the chat box. So there it is. The game code is there. Please enter your name in the following format. First and last name with your affiliated institution. So example is Joseph Halos, EBSCO. Next is that we will give you 2 minutes to register with a game. And of course, we have prizes. We have first prize, 1,000 pesos. Second prize, 500 pesos. And third prize is 300 pesos. So please join our game. Prizes will be sent through your GCash account only. And if you are a winner, please send a private message to our EBSCO Southeast Asia Facebook page. So just search in your Facebook, EBSCO Southeast Asia Facebook, Southeast Asia, and then just, if you're a winner, type there your name and we will get in touch with you. Okay, this game is about speed and accuracy. Also, Nawat from our marketing team has placed the link to our EBSCO Southeast Asia page. So are you ready? Have you all clicked the link?
Okay, before we start, we'll just like to I would like to thank again Mike for um agreeing to do this webinar. Thank you very much, Mike. Mike is flying with her daughter. With a daughter to New York, who's going to college now.
We would
Again, Mike,
also,
thank you.
we would also like to acknowledge the presence of Miss Anna Russo, KCU, Nawat from marketing, and our boss, Will Ann. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Okay, now for some announcements. We have upcoming webinars, more webinars for you. The first one is exclusively for Albasa members. If you are an Albasa member, please join this webinar. It's entitled Optimizing Research Experience with EBSCO Resources. It will be facilitated by our trainer, Mr. Ryan Carl Salas. There will be 3 days for this, April 15, April 16, and April 17. We have the QR code on the screen. You can take a picture. But again, this is exclusive for Albasa members only. Albasa member libraries only.
You could also reach out for those Albasa members to Miss Lynn Valinsona, the business manager of Albasa. Thank you.
Yes. And also, you can see that we have a competition. Are you the ultimate EBSCO ebook enthusiast competition? For this one, we will post more details in our Facebook page, also EBSCO Southeast Asia page. And to sign up, with the training session to enhance your research skills and win a voucher or gift card. So this is also part of our training with our training special trainer, Ryan Salas. So for more details, please see our Facebook page. And we are very excited to advise everyone that we have another webinar lined up for all of you. In fact, our trainer or the person who will conduct the webinar is here in our call, Miss Anna Russo. Hello, good morning. She's the Senior Business Development Manager. There she is, she's waving. The title of the webinar is Browser Privacy Changes, the Impact on IP Access, and How to Future-Proof Your Library. So this is a very interesting, very informative topic for all of you. It will be on May 16, 2024, Thursday, 1:30 in the afternoon Manila time. For everyone's information, Anna is based in, where is she based? In
UK.
Hi, good morning, everyone. In
Yes.
London, in the
in
UK.
London.
Yeah.
Yes, there you go.
That-
So hi.
That's why
Hi.
we're doing it in the afternoon. So this is the first time that we are doing a webinar in the afternoon. 1:30 p.m. would be very early for Anna. That would be maybe around 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning. We were supposed to do at 10 a.m. in the Philippines, but that would be really very, very early for her, like 2 a.m. in the morning. So we opted to do a 1:30 p.m. Webinar. This is very exciting. So for all of you who have IP authentication, you should really hear what Anne is going to say about the future proofing your library. Okay, thank you. Anna, do you have anything to say?
No, just to say that I'm very much looking forward to the session and I hope to see as many of you as possible there.
What time is it now for you, Anna? If you don't
It
mind.
is 4:30 in the morning for me.
Okay, so that's how
Oh.
early it is for Anna. So thanks, Anna, for joining us. She was here since the beginning of the seminar. Just thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Anna, for
Thank you
joining
so
us.
Thank you
much,
for having
Anna.
me.
And again, for more information on our webinar today on Folio, please visit HTTP. You can see the URL or the links on the screen. It's www.folio.org or wiki.folio.org. And as always, we encourage you to please subscribe or like our Facebook page, EBSCO Southeast Asia, to get the latest and all the information we would like to send to you. It is always through one of the most important channels is EBSCO Southeast Asia page. If you have queries, questions, we also have someone who will answer you there and they will direct it to us as well. Okay, we promise that we will be giving digital certificates after the webinar. So here are the requirements for all of you. First is that you should have registered and attended via Zoom. You should have accomplished the webinar evaluation form. Here is the link posted on the screen with a QR code, and the link is over there. Please take a photo. You can also scan the QR code to access the evaluation link. This is very important. We will give you, or the link will be closed until April 14, 2024. That's this Sunday at 11:59 p.m. If you submit after that, you will not be able to get the certificate anymore. Certificates and webinar recording link will be sent to the attendee's registered email address minimum of 2 weeks after the webinar. The webinar recording will also be posted in our EBSCO Southeast Asia Facebook page. Joseph already mentioned the mechanics of the online raffle. So right after the webinar, we will close the webinar and do a recording on the online raffle. Please stay tuned. So this is the end of our webinar. On behalf of our team, Joseph, Bon, and myself, together with our other colleagues, Casey, our marketing team, Nawat, and our boss, Bill, thank you very much for attending this webinar. We hope you were able to get some insights and valuable information. And we look forward to having you again next week together with Anna. So with that, thank you very much for spending your morning with us. Have a blessed day.